Deep in the Blackthorn Ridge wilderness, a chilling discovery sends shock waves through the search team. Ranger Ethan Carter's body is found brutally murdered, chained to a tree. But when Shadow, the elite K-9 who located him, suddenly breaks protocol, officers realize this is no ordinary case. The dog knew the victim, and when he locks onto the killer's scent, his revenge defies all training.
The fluorescent lights of the county sheriff's department hummed quietly as Officer Daniel Mercer packed his gear at 5:15 a.m. The early morning silence was broken only by the steady breathing of Shadow, his German Shepherd partner, who sat at perfect attention nearby. Dark, intelligent eyes never left his handler's movements. "Ready for another day, boy?" Mercer asked, scratching behind Shadow's ears. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor, his subtle version of enthusiasm. Unlike other K9s, Shadow had always been remarkably composed, almost dignified in his responses. At 5 years old, the German Shepherd had already achieved near-legendary status within the department. His cadaver detection abilities bordered on supernatural, finding remains in cases where other dogs and sophisticated equipment had failed. 3 months ago, he'd located a missing hiker's body beneath a landslide that had reshaped the terrain. 2 weeks before that, he'd tracked human remains through a flash-flooded canyon, leading recovery teams to a body that would have otherwise been lost to the currents. The connection between Mercer and Shadow had been immediate when they were paired 18 months ago. But Mercer still sometimes felt there was something deeper about his partner. An awareness that went beyond even the most highly trained police dogs he'd worked with before. His phone buzzed with a text from Sheriff Hayes. "My office. Now. Possible missing person." "Let's go, Shadow," Mercer commanded softly, clipping the lead to the dog's working harness. Shadow moved with fluid precision beside him through the station's quiet hallways. Sheriff Hayes looked up from his desk as they entered, his weathered face grave. Forest Rangers gone missing. Ethan Carter, 42. Experienced outdoorsman. Didn't check in after his patrol 3 days ago. His truck was found abandoned at Blackthorn Ridge. "Any leads?" Mercer asked, accepting the file folder Hayes handed him. "Nothing solid. Rangers have done preliminary searches, but the area's vast. We need Shadow." Mercer nodded, flipping through Carter's file. "Respected conservationist. 15 years with the Forest Service. Specialized in wildlife protection." "Something else," Hayes added. Carter had run-ins with poachers in the northern sector recently. Filed reports on several locals, including Vince Crow. "Nasty piece of work with priors." Mercer glanced down at Shadow, who remained perfectly composed yet somehow more alert at the mention of the missing ranger. It was a strange coincidence that Shadow had come to Mercer from someone in the Forest Service about 18 months ago. The transfer paperwork had been vague, just that Shadow's original handler had surrendered him to the K9 program because his talents were too exceptional to keep him as a personal companion. Forest Service headquarters buzzed with tense activity when Mercer arrived half an hour later. Shadow stepped from the truck, his nose immediately sampling the mountain air. Rangers clustered around maps spread across a folding table beneath a canopy, their faces drawn with worry. 3 days missing meant they were now searching for either a very lucky survivor or a body. Chief Ranger Lillian Cole approached. "Officer Mercer? I'm Cole. Thanks for coming." Mercer nodded. "What's the last confirmed sighting of Ranger Carter?" "Tuesday morning. He was heading out on routine patrol of the Blackthorn Basin area." Cole pointed to a northeastern section of the map. "Checking reports of illegal trapping. We found his truck here, but the trails branch in 5 directions." Shadow's attention never wavered as Mercer offered Carter's uniform shirt for him to scent. His nostrils flared as he memorized the missing man's smell. What surprised Mercer was Shadow's immediate intensity, not just professional focus, but something deeper, almost personal. "He seems particularly driven today," Cole observed. Dark clouds gathered against the mountain peaks as two ranger guides led Mercer and Shadow to the trailhead where Carter's truck had been found. Recent rainstorms had turned parts of the path to mud, potentially washing away scents and evidence. Mercer unclipped Shadow's tracking lead. Search. Find him. The German Shepherd began his methodical grid pattern, nose working overtime. 20 minutes in, Shadow suddenly lifted his head, testing the air currents, then veered sharply eastward, away from the planned search area. He's got something, Mercer called to the Rangers, hurrying to keep pace as Shadow pulled them deeper into a dense section of forest. The terrain grew steeper, more treacherous, not a route anyone would choose voluntarily. He's tracking like he's on a mission, one ranger noted, breathing heavily. I've worked with search dogs before, but never seen this level of focus. Mercer kept his eyes on Shadow's tail as it disappeared around a massive fallen tree. He usually works in a precise grid. This is different. It's like he knows exactly where he's going. The temperature dropped as they descended deeper into the ravine, the air thick with damp earth and decaying leaves. Shadow paused occasionally at junctions before continuing with unwavering certainty. Then, without warning, Shadow froze. His hackles rose, a low whine building in his throat. Mercer had never seen such a reaction from his normally stoic partner. "Shadow," he called cautiously. The dog trembled slightly before pushing forward again, more slowly now, leading them toward a small clearing. As they broke through the undergrowth, Mercer saw it, a massive oak tree standing alone in the center of the space. And chained to its trunk, the unmistakable form of a human body. "We've got a body," Mercer radioed, his heart sinking as he approached, clearing about half a mile east of Search Grid C. The victim, dressed in Forest Service khakis, sat slumped against the tree trunk, arms pulled behind and secured with chains. Multiple stab wounds peppered his chest and abdomen. Blood had pooled and dried in the dirt beneath him. Death had not come quickly or mercifully. What happened next stunned everyone present. Shadow, the consummate professional who normally maintained perfect discipline at death scenes, broke protocol entirely. The shepherd approached the body, whimpering, a sound Mercer had never heard from him before, and began gently nuzzling the ranger's limp hand. "Shadow back," Mercer commanded, shocked by the breach of training. For the first time in their partnership, Shadow ignored a direct order. He remained beside the body, his posture no longer that of a working dog, but something else entirely, grief-stricken, almost human in his distress. As the recovery team prepared to transport the body, Mercer watched his partner with growing concern, a theory forming in his mind. Shadow wasn't acting like a cadaver dog who'd successfully located a target. He was behaving like someone who'd found a friend. One of the technicians carefully searched the victim's pockets, retrieving a wallet. "Ethan Carter. Forest Service," he confirmed, holding up the ID card. The photo showed a man in his early 40s with kind eyes, a weathered face, and a neatly trimmed beard. The moment Mercer saw it clearly, his heart skipped. Recognition hit him with the force of a physical blow. It can't be. He looked between the ID photo and Shadow. Shadow was transferred to our K-9 unit from someone in the Forest Service who couldn't keep him despite their bond, Mercer explained, the pieces falling into place. The paperwork said his original handler surrendered him because his detection abilities were too exceptional to waste on personal companionship. He needed to be in service. Understanding dawned on the faces around him. Carter was Shadow's original handler, Mercer confirmed. The dog's unprecedented behavior now made perfect sense. He gave him up so Shadow could work with the sheriff's department. Alone with Shadow beside Carter's body, Mercer whispered, "I'm sorry, boy. I'm so sorry." The shepherd leaned against him, seeking comfort in a way he never had before. "We'll find who did this," Mercer promised, both to Shadow and to the man who had loved him enough to let him go. "I swear it." As the medical examiner prepared to transport Carter's body, Mercer gave Shadow the space and time he needed. The shepherd remained in a solemn vigil, occasionally nuzzling the ranger's hand. The seasoned officers and medical personnel worked quietly, affected by the dog's obvious grief. Then, without warning, Shadow's head snapped up. His nose worked frantically. His grief-stricken demeanor vanished, replaced by the focused intensity Mercer recognized from their tracking work. The transformation was so abrupt, so complete, that everyone around them noticed. "What's happening?" one of the rangers asked. "He's got something," Mercer replied, watching as Shadow circled the tree where Carter had been chained. "He's scenting." Without hesitation, Shadow locked onto a trail and bolted toward the northern edge of the clearing, nearly pulling the lead from Mercer's grip. "He's tracking someone," Mercer called out, struggling to keep pace as Shadow charged through the underbrush. "Maybe our killer." They pushed deeper into the forest, Shadow pulling them up a steep incline, through dense thickets, and across a small stream. Despite the challenging terrain and the time elapsed since the murder, Shadow never hesitated, never lost the scent. The trail led them to a small valley where a creek cut through the landscape. The dog's pace finally slowed as they approached a crude campsite, remains of a fire, food wrappers, flattened grass where someone had slept. Shadow circled the area methodically, then froze, his body rigid with alert. He stood perfectly still beside the remnants of the fire pit, staring at a spot where several larger stones formed a crude ring around the ashes. "He's found something," Mercer said quietly, approaching carefully to avoid disturbing potential evidence. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just stones, ash, and dirt. Then, looking more closely, he noticed a slight discoloration on the soil beside one particularly large rock. Beneath it, partially buried in the soft earth, lay a hunting knife with a distinctive carved handle. Even in the muted forest light, dark stains were visible on the blade. "He found the murder weapon," Mercer said with quiet amazement, looking at Shadow with newfound respect. "Through rain and days of weather, he tracked the killer's trail and led us right to it." Shadow remained in his alert position, not moving a muscle even as additional officers arrived. His composure was remarkable, especially considering the emotional context of the search. Despite his connection to Carter, despite his earlier grief, he had maintained perfect discipline. "I've never seen anything like this," admitted Detective Reynolds as the forensics team carefully excavated the knife. "Most human suspects crack under emotional pressure. Your dog channeled it into the investigation." Mercer nodded as the knife was bagged. Preliminary examination confirmed what seemed obvious: blood in the crevices of the handle and along the blade, consistent with Carter's wounds. "We'll need DNA confirmation," the lead technician said, "but I bet my pension this is your murder weapon." "Any prints?" Reynolds asked. "Possible partial on the handle. If we're lucky, whoever did this got careless." Back at the sheriff's department, the buzz of focused energy filled the air as forensics processed the evidence Shadow had discovered. Mercer sat at his desk reviewing Carter's case file while Shadow lay at his feet, the shepherd's eyes rarely leaving his handler's face. Though still affected by the day's events, Shadow had settled into a vigilant calm, as if waiting for the next phase of their mission. Mercer's phone rang. Detective Reynolds calling from the lab. "We got a hit on the prints. Vince Crow. Multiple priors for poaching, assault, criminal trespass. He's been on Carter's radar for months." "Crow," Mercer repeated, flipping through the file until he found the name. Carter had filed 3 reports against Crow in the past year, all related to illegal trapping in protected areas. "That's our motive," Reynolds confirmed. "Revenge." The lab also confirmed the blood on the knife matches Carter's type. "We've got enough for an arrest warrant." Surveillance photos of Vince Crow revealed a man in his mid-30s with a shaggy beard, hard eyes, and the weathered complexion of someone who lived rough. Security footage showed his truck heading toward Blackthorn Ridge the morning Carter went missing, then leaving again that night. The timeline fit perfectly. Dusk painted the mountains in amber light as the tactical team took position around Crow's isolated cabin. Mercer and Shadow waited behind a cluster of pine trees 50 yards from the back door. The shepherd's body language was a study in controlled tension, perfectly still save for his eyes, tracking every movement of the officers surrounding the property. The SWAT team moved with practiced efficiency, converging on the cabin from multiple angles. "Sheriff's Department. Search warrant!" echoed across the clearing as they breached the front door. Almost immediately, a crash sounded from the rear of the cabin, followed by a shout over the radio. "Suspect fleeing out the back window, east side." Before the commander could issue orders, a figure burst through the back door. Vince Crow, clutching a backpack, sprinting toward the dense forest behind his property. Mercer made a split-second decision, unclipping Shadow's lead. "Shadow, apprehend!" The shepherd launched forward like a missile, covering the distance between them and the fleeing suspect with breathtaking speed. Crow heard the approaching dog and glanced back, terror flooding his face as he saw 80 pounds of focused German shepherd closing in. "Stop! Police!" Mercer shouted, running behind Shadow with his weapon drawn. Crow ignored the command, redoubling his efforts to reach the tree-line, but he never stood a chance. Shadow closed the final distance with a powerful leap, striking Crow between the shoulder blades and sending him crashing face-first into the dirt. "Vince Crow, you're under arrest for the murder of Forest Ranger Ethan Carter," Mercer announced, reciting the Miranda rights as Crow was brought to his feet. "I didn't kill nobody," Crow spat, though his eyes darted nervously. "Don't know what you're talking about." But when his gaze fell on Shadow, something changed in his expression, a flicker of recognition, followed by poorly disguised fear. "That's Carter's dog," he muttered, almost to himself. "What the hell?" The interrogation room at the sheriff's department was deliberately stark. Bare walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, uncomfortable chairs. Crow sat hunched on one side, hands cuffed before him, while Detective Reynolds laid out the evidence against him. Mercer reluctantly led Shadow to the department's specialized K9 area, a secure room with bedding, water, and familiar toys. "Stay, Shadow. I'll be back soon," he instructed, securing the door's safety latch. Back in observation, Mercer watched as Reynolds confronted Crow with the evidence. The knife found at the campsite with his prints, blood matching Carter's type, his truck captured on cameras near the scene. "It wasn't supposed to go like that," Crow finally admitted, leaning forward. "I just wanted to scare him, teach him a lesson about messing with my traps." As Crow began detailing the confrontation, how he'd ambushed Carter on the trail, how things had escalated, a commotion erupted from somewhere in the building. "K9 loose in the building," came the report over the radio. "Somehow got out of the secure area." Shadow rounded the corner, moving with purpose, ignoring the officers attempting to corral him. For the first time in their partnership, he bypassed Mercer completely, his focus entirely on the interrogation room door. The shepherd hit the door with his full weight, forcing it open despite its heavy construction. Crow and Reynolds looked up in shock as 80 pounds of focused fury burst into the room. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Shadow launched across the space with terrifying precision, clearing the table entirely, his target unmistakable. Crow barely had time to raise his hands before the shepherd struck him directly in the face, both of them crashing to the floor. "Get him off! Get him off!" Crow screamed as Shadow's jaws clamped onto his cheek and forehead, the attack targeted, deliberate. Mercer and Reynolds both moved simultaneously, grabbing Shadow and trying to pull him away. "Shadow, release! Release now!" Mercer commanded, using every ounce of authority in his voice. For several heart-stopping seconds, Shadow maintained his grip. Then finally he responded to Mercer's repeated commands, releasing the suspect and backing away, blood staining his muzzle. "He tried to kill me," Crow screamed through the blood. "That damn dog tried to kill me." Shadow was immediately placed in mandatory isolation while Crow received medical treatment for his injuries. The reality of their situation was grim. Police K9s who attacked without command faced a standardized response, often euthanasia, regardless of circumstances. 20 stitches, Sheriff Hayes informed Mercer grimly. Crow's already talking lawsuit, demanding Shadow be put down immediately. He broke the case, Mercer argued, desperation edging into his voice. Found the body, tracked the evidence, located the murder weapon. And then attacked a handcuffed suspect in custody, Hayes finished firmly. The evidence collection is now potentially compromised. The department's conference room had been transformed into a makeshift hearing chamber by 9 a.m. the following morning. A long table at the front seated Chief Jenkins from County, Sheriff Hayes, and the department's legal counsel. Chairs arranged in rows accommodated various officers, Forest Service personnel, and administrative staff who had come to witness the proceedings. Shadow was brought in by a neutral handler, department protocol for K9S under review, and secured to a fixed point at the side of the room. Despite everything, he maintained perfect composure, his professional demeanor a stark contrast to yesterday's violence. When Mercer entered, Shadow's attention immediately fixed on him, but he remained in the perfect stay position he'd been commanded into. "This disciplinary hearing is now in session," Chief Jenkins announced, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years in law enforcement. "We're here to review the incident involving K9 Officer Shadow and determine appropriate action according to department protocols." Mercer had spent a sleepless night preparing his statement, gathering Shadow's service records, and making calls to K9 training experts who might support their case. He'd known Shadow for only 18 months of the dog's 5-year career, but in that time, they'd become inseparable partners whose combined skills had solved dozens of cases. Detective Reynolds provided a clinical recounting of what had transpired in the interrogation room, followed by the department veterinarian, who had examined Shadow afterward and found no signs of physical distress or illness that might explain the behavior. As the questioning continued, a department officer entered and handed Sheriff Hayes a document. "Chief Jenkins," Hayes interrupted, "we've just received relevant information. Vince Crowe has provided a full confession to the murder of Ethan Carter." The room fell silent. "This morning," Hayes explained, "Crowe requested to speak with detectives without his attorney present. He waived his rights and provided a detailed confession, including premeditation." He glanced at the statement. He specifically mentions here that seeing Shadow triggered his confession. Says, "That dog knew. Somehow it knew exactly what I did to Carter." After nearly an hour of testimonials, including a surprise video statement from Shadow's original trainer, the board recessed to deliberate. 20 minutes later, they returned with their decision. "After reviewing the evidence and circumstances," Jenkins began, "this board has determined that while K9 Officer Shadow's actions violated protocol, the exceptional nature of this case warrants discretion. Shadow will be placed on probationary status for 3 months, during which he will undergo intensive retraining. Officer Mercer will also complete advanced handler certification focused on emotional management in working K9S. Relief flooded through Mercer as the verdict was announced. Following the probationary period, Shadow would be re-evaluated for return to full duty. This decision acknowledges both the severity of the protocol violation and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding it, Jenkins continued. This board also recognizes Shadow's exceptional service record and the unique situation created by his connection to the victim. Chief Ranger Cole approached Mercer as the crowd began to disperse. "Ethan would be proud," she said quietly. "He gave up Shadow because he believed the dog's abilities could save lives and bring justice to victims. Today proved he was right." "I wish I'd known him," Mercer replied, watching as the neutral handler prepared to return Shadow to him. Cole smiled sadly. "When Ethan surrendered Shadow to the K9 program, he told me it was like giving up a piece of his soul. But he said some partnerships are too important to keep to yourself when they could serve a greater purpose." As the hearing concluded, Mercer unclipped Shadow from the fixed point, allowing him to stand freely at his side once more. The shepherd's composure remained perfect, but something in his posture suggested understanding, perhaps even satisfaction with the outcome. "Ready to go home, partner?" Mercer asked softly. Shadow looked up at him, those intelligent eyes communicating something beyond words, not just loyalty or relief, but a deeper connection that had been strengthened through this shared ordeal. Justice had been served, for both Ethan Carter and Shadow. Vince Crowe had confessed and would face the consequences of his actions. And Mercer had gained a deeper appreciation for the remarkable bond between handlers and their canine partners, a connection that sometimes transcended human understanding, bridging not just species, but time and loss as well.